Hello, my YouTube friends. Today I'm going to talk about a diamond in a rough, probably a company that very few of you are even aware exists or know of, and some of you might, but I'm guessing very few. So stick around, it's going to be a pretty cool video that goes outside of the things I typically talk about. Good morning. My name is Adam Kahn, and this is Investing with Adam K. Today is Sunday, April 28th. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different than usual because normally I try to find those investments that are right in front of your face. And this is one that you guys probably aren't aware of, which is Portillo's. Portillo's is a restaurant that started out of Chicago. They've been around a long time. I lived in Chicago 10 years, which is why I guess it makes me familiar with them. And I think they're a real diamond in a rough and creates a great opportunity for potential long-term growth here. I'm going to delve into some of the numbers, a little bit about the restaurant, and why I see it as a really good investment going forward. So a little of what made me think about Portillo's was yesterday we went out to Dave & Buster's. My son and his friends were playing there. My wife and I were hanging out, just waiting for them. And it was mobbed. Now, keep in mind, it's Saturday, so I understand people are going to go out on Saturday night. And Dave & Buster's is a good place to go and hang out, maybe play some video games, eat some food, whatever else. What caught my attention, though, was every table was filled up. People were ordering drinks and food and all sorts of stuff. The kids were playing video games, and their prices were super expensive in my mind, and the food is not so great. I hate to be hard on Dave & Buster's, but that's just my opinion on it. If you guys love it, well, you guys love it. I totally get it. I just think it's a bit of a disappointment in the food. You get what you expect, but I'm pretty shocked at the pricing. Now, I get a lot of sticker shock at a lot of restaurants now. I feel like the inflation really has flowed through, and it made me start thinking about Portillo's. I don't know why I focused on the other. Portillo's does not have video games, but I knew that their stock had been around for about a year or so. I don't know what made me look at it recently, but it's pretty much dropped in half since it opened up as an IPO. Then I'm looking at how busy Dave & Buster's is. I start looking at the market cap for Portillo's, how many restaurants there are across the country, and all of that stuff, and start thinking, man, they really have a good potential to really grow over the next 5 or 10 years. Now, they're so small in terms of market cap, no big investor and no mutual fund or anything else is even going to notice them. They're not going to really be on anybody's radar. The prices may get undervalued and overvalued significantly just based on that it's so small and that there's only 84 restaurants so far. But what I found interesting is they actually already have profits. Their PE for a company that's that early on in their cycle is pretty reasonable, at least from what I saw on E-Trade, which I know is not always accurate. But it's showing below 40. It's about a 39 point, let me double check before I misquote it, 38.43 price to earnings ratio, which I think is really reasonable for a company in its growth stage. I know that's high for a typical company in the stock market, but you have to understand where they are in their growth. They're super early. They've only been an IPO for a year, and they plan to expand at a pretty good rate over the next 4 to 5 years. The other thing is I think Portillo's is tapping into a segment that really is overlooked. They make Italian beefs, they make hot dogs, they do cheeseburgers and hamburgers, they do chicken sandwiches and ribs and salads and sausages and all sorts of things. A lot of them that are Chicago based, but a lot of them that would match anywhere that they were put up. It's also that if you go to one of their locations, the place is super busy. They opened up in the suburbs of Chicago and they did drive-through, and you see multiple lines of cars just backed up waiting to order and pick up food. Plus, inside the store is extremely busy, and their price point was pretty reasonable. When I used to live in Chicago, I always used to think they were pretty inexpensive for what they served. I haven't looked in probably 10 years, so I expected it to really be a bit of a sticker shock like everything else. And I was surprised to see, if I remember correctly, an Italian beef sandwich started at $8 and change. and they would do what they called a big Italian beef or a giant one or something along that lines that was around $10 and change, which compared to what I've seen at restaurants, I mean, when I go out, even Subway's pretty expensive. That seemed really reasonable. You can get a hot dog for around $4, and their hot dogs are pretty good. I'd call them fast casual, but they're a little bit more fast food, but they run a really good operation. The food comes out quickly, you pick it up, you sit down with it. It's kind of fun and loud and exciting, and it's a really cool place to be. So I think as they continue to open up locations, they're going to have good success. The other thing is their market cap is less than $1 billion. Currently, they're at $880 million for a market cap. That's why I say they're so small that nobody's even noticing them. And that creates a huge opportunity. There's only 84 restaurants right now. Now I look, Dave and Buster's only at 161. So there's double, and they have the video games, but I think they have a bigger reach than a Dave and Buster's. So I looked up Olive Garden, and I also looked up the Cheesecake Factory out of curiosity. I think they have a bigger reach than Cheesecake Factory, even though Cheesecake Factory has that monstrous menu. I think Cheesecake Factory has a monstrous menu that none of it they do very well. Olive Garden might have a bigger reach, but Portillo's could be in between those two. And there's currently 240 Cheesecake Factories and 922 Olive Gardens. So if they currently have 84 stores, I see that as an avenue to really grow. Like a company like Shake Shack, they probably match a little bit better, which currently has about 500 locations. You know, I think Shake Shack has more of a limited menu than a place like a Portillo's, and Portillo's is a much bigger restaurant. It's more on the lines of like an Olive Garden or something for its size, but it's a little bit different in terms of it doesn't have like waiter and waitress service, but they've got a nice big menu that's going to really cater to a lot of different people. I also think the segment of people who they're going to cater to are going to be a lot different than what is already out there and what's being marketed to. So I think this gives them a really unique position to grow, and I think they'll do well. And when I look at the operations that are in Chicago, they're really well run. Now, you're going to have to give this one time. I don't see it as anything that's going to move dramatically anytime soon. And again, this is out of my normal pick. It's not anything I would put a bulk of my investment in because you just never know how a small company like that is going to do. Now, also, like I always say, this is not financial advice. You guys need to seek out your own financial advisors and make your own decisions when you're making any decisions on that for yourselves. You shouldn't listen to me. I'm just some idiot on YouTube like everybody else. I just really like Portillo's, and I think in 3, 4, or 5 years, you really could see your money double or triple. And I know that sounds like really good return, and it is. And I think what you might be shocked about is the stock isn't going to do anything exciting. But currently it's at $12 a share. If in 5 years all of a sudden it's at 30 or 35, you've crushed it. And it really hasn't felt like it's done a whole lot. I picture that's what it can do if they're able to grow at the pace they're hoping to grow, because I think they're going to find themselves in a position where their stores are profitable rather quickly, and they're going to do really well in the locations they go to. Now, the main store of theirs that I'm familiar with is in a pretty high rent district in the center of Chicago, which means they could really expand to New York or California cities. I think they do really well in an area like Detroit. Now, I don't know how good they'll do, and I don't know what's going on in Detroit in terms of ability for growth and things like that. I just picture that as where they could do really well. I think if they opened here in Vegas, they would crush it. There's really nothing here in town that's anywhere close to what they offer. And that's why I think they hit a segment of demand that isn't really targeted at this point. I think there's real potential for Portillo's. Now, I don't want to overstate it. I think the valuation is probably pretty fair. I just, as somebody who was in Chicago and I think about how well they do, I think the fact that the stock has fallen in half, you probably had the people who were familiar with the company buying it when they came out as an IPO. A year later, they've probably been disenfranchised or a little upset with its performance. They could be getting out of the stock. Now, they have their earnings report May 7th, so it might have a big move in either direction. But I'm not concerned how they do this quarter. This really is one I want to own for 3 or 4 years, see if they're able to grow the stores, see if they're up to 120 or 150 stores by then, and if they're actually able to grow the brand. Anyway, that's my diamond in the rough. As you guys know, I generally don't do that. I may do a second video today because I want to discuss my favorite comment that was made on one of my videos and go into some of the details in one of those. So stick around and check out this video and check out that one as well. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, make comments. Let me know if you have a diamond in rough that's a stock that others haven't heard of. I'm guessing very few of you are familiar with Portillo's.